Welcome to Hope from the Word. I'm Pastor Mike Swenson. Have you ever met somebody who has just lost control of everything in their life? They're not sure which direction to go, and they feel like they have lost the ability to stay secure in their life. We've all seen those situations, and part of the problem is they just feel like they've lost that security. It's kind of like the person who's been driving down the road at highway speed and their brakes go out on their car. They may just like throw their hands up in the air and say, I don't know what to do, I'm going to crash. And when in reality, at their hand is the emergency brake. All they have to do is grab a hold, grab a hold of that emergency brake and pull it to slow themselves down to come to a safe speed. And sometimes in life you may feel like that your world is a runaway situation, but you have to place your faith and your confidence in Jesus Christ. Over in the Bible, we find the Apostle Paul writing a very powerful message and reminding of who is really in control and holds everything together in this world. And he writes about the Son, and he's referring to Jesus here. And he says it in Colossians chapter 1, verse 15 to 17, these words. He says, the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He goes on to say, he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So Jesus is not just another prophet, but he is the very Son of God, and he is over all creation. And this is a powerful reminder to us that no matter what you face in this life, in him all things were created. This is really an encouraging message. Why? Well, I'm glad you asked, because really it doesn't matter what you face. Jesus was with the Father at creation, and all things were formed through him by the word of his mouth. And it was whether it was in the heavens, whether it was on the earth, whether it was in some other place and planets, he formed it. And you can recognize the fact that he has everything under control. There's comfort in knowing that Jesus was with the Father and caused all things to come into existence. You may not always feel like you have control, but God has called it all into existence. And since he has done this, there is nothing that he can't bring together. And you know, the Bible speaks of a guy named Joseph. Joseph, he lost all control in his life. His brothers didn't like him very much because his dad gave him special treatment. And so that kind of frustrated them. And his brothers ended up selling off their own brother to a bunch of traders coming by. And in the end, God invested into Joseph's life. And he used him to save the life of his own brothers who sold him, and also his other relatives. Joseph told his brothers this message face to face. He said, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish something very special. The saving of many lives. It was at the end of his story that we see that God brought healing and hope for many people, although his story started with some great pain. And we all face trials in this life, yet the Lord can turn those things for good in our lives. And it's here that we remember what God said through the Apostle Paul. He said these words again. He said, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So what does this mean to us today? Well, it means something very important to us, that the Lord holds everything together even when we feel like we have lost all control. And I'm sure that Joseph felt like he was done for at times. Time after time, he went through some real trials. But the end of his story was that God's blessing was to bless not only him and to bring him up to be a person who is effective in his world, but also to save the lives of his family members from drought and famine. And I believe if you continue to trust in Christ, that he will hold your world together, the end of your story can be much greater than the pain that you may face today. Knowing that God is faithful, knowing that he holds things together for us is so important. And I pray that you continue to trust Christ, that you continue to walk with him, and recognize that God has your back. May the Lord bless you this week. May you have a wonderful week. May you continue to trust him. God bless.